I'm Millie Weaver, and you're watching the Millennial Millie Show. Well, Democrats and rhinos alike they are panicking right now because they are sensing that a massive MAGA wave is fast approaching. And so right now, all across the media, we're seeing a lot of polls coming out that are definitely favoring the Republicans strongly. But we're also seeing Democrats and the establishment teaming up together to try to push the J6 narrative very hard right now to try to get Trump disqualified from running in 2024. They're panicking about 2024, but they're also panicking about the midterms because if the Republicans and the MAGA Republicans, to be specific, take back the House and the Senate, that means that they could essentially impeach Joe Biden for some of the many faults or crimes that he has done, as well as just 25th Amendment. So they're definitely panicking right now. They're also panicking about the Supreme Court. If the Republicans get the establishment Democrats and rhinos out of there, they can assure that the Democrats aren't going to be able to pack the courts, which is what they plan to do. They plan to pack the courts so that they can ensure their right to kill unborn babies, aka have abortions. All right, so let's look at some of these polls. We've got polls favoring the Republicans, okay? So if you look at these numbers here, this is what they're saying it is, which probably means it's a lot higher than that, okay? Because they like to pad the polls. But even with all the padding, it's still showing that there's a clear likely victory for many red or Republican candidates. So they're definitely panicking right now. Here we have Politico saying more voters trust Republicans on the economy as interest in midterms hit high. Gee, you don't think it's because with the past 2 years having Democrats in control of the House, pretty much in control of the Senate in a large way, and in control of the presidency, and we've seen our economy be destroyed and crippled. The greatest country in America has been brought to its knees in just a matter of 2 years by the horrific and horrible policies of the Democrats, okay? So the doing away with having our own energy independence, Biden's attack essentially on the oil and gas industry, and now he's at a point where he's draining the strategic oil reserves in order to try to artificially lower gas prices in time for the midterms because they are so fearful right now that they're all going to be voted out, and they should be voted out because their policies are directly costing Americans more money. More money because of inflation, more money because of higher gas prices, and more money because the cost of living is so high now that everything just, costs more. That's inflation, right? But Nancy Pelosi wants to try to act like those are two different things. All right, so what are the Democrats trying to do then? Because they can't win fair and square. They are trying to disqualify Trump from running in 2024 with their Democrat clown show, January 6th Select Committee. And it's not just the Democrats. You've got Liz Cheney also playing a big role in that. She's a rhino. And this is a very interesting news clip now that came out of MSNBC, where they have their political analysts on there all trying to sit there and think of how they can throw the book at Trump over January 6th. Yet they themselves even admit that that's going to be a lot of stretching and that basically the evidence isn't there to try to pin January 6th on President Trump. But let's watch their desperate attempts to try to stretch and make connections that aren't even there.
Importance of whether or not the committee sends over criminal referral. This isn't about the technical aspect of whether or not they refer Trump's case criminally. This is about whether or not they take a case to the country. That we have produced the evidence of his intent. We have produced the evidence from witnesses like Cassidy Hutchinson that you hadn't even talked to before we put her in a public hearing. And if you do not prosecute, it calls into question whether or not we're a nation.
Oh, you mean Cassidy Hutchins, the girl who got up there and made up a bunch of bogus claims that later Secret Service agents and other Trump aides came out and essentially contested and said that this isn't true, that it doesn't go along with any of what they witnessed. Oh, that girl? Okay. And it's interesting how they had a lot of one-sided testimonies throughout the J6 committee. They didn't really want to let anyone speak or testify that would actually show that Donald Trump was innocent. They just wanted, people to show that stories that went along with their narrative
of laws and rules.
Yeah, statements like Liz Cheney's make Justice Department prosecutors very uncomfortable because prosecutors are not supposed to act based on public pressure from anybody, most certainly not politicians, because they're supposed to decide cases based on facts and law and not political pressure. But they can't ignore the fact.
So why are they putting the pressure on? Well, it's because the midterms are coming. Liz Cheney knows how well it feels to be primaried out. She lost her seat to a MAGA Republican, right? So they know very well what's about to happen. So that's why they're laying on the pressure there. Help us, help us. They are squealing, okay? Because they know what's about to happen.
Facts. And what the committee has done here is to present to the nation facts that do seem to demonstrate at least probable cause, if not sufficient guilt to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Donald Trump is criminally culpable here. I don't know that they've made the case for his link to the violence at the Capitol. Lots of good circumstantial evidence. But I absolutely think they've made the case of a conspiracy to defraud the United States by knowing that it is.
Okay. So wait. She just said that they don't have any evidence that links Donald Trump to any of the violence on January 6th at the Capitol. I wonder why that is. I mean, I can't imagine that it might have something to do with the fact that in the Sunrise Exposed Zoom chats where we had all these left-wing groups plotting to take over buildings, including the January 6th Capitol, and, we've got all these people dressed in black bloc gear smashing in the windows and breaking into the Capitol, right? I can't imagine why that might be. I mean, they tried to say that somehow Trump, who was still giving a speech when people started breaking into the Capitol building, that somehow he was responsible for that when it actually went to his detriment. And I'm going to explain later on in this how exactly that went to his detriment. But it's just amazing to hear them actually admit that. So the only case they're claiming that they might have against Trump, which really isn't even a case, in my opinion, okay, is that Trump contested the election. Trump said he thought the election was stolen. And therefore, they believe he's at some kind of fault for contesting and saying he believed the election was stolen. Because they're claiming that his intent was bad because they're saying, oh, we believe that he didn't believe that it was stolen. Okay, prove that in a court of law, because all they're going to have to do is get Trump to sit up on the stand, and Trump's just going to say, I believe it was stolen. End of discussion. This is ridiculous.
She's placing pressure on DOJ as a public official. She is herself a lame duck congresswoman. But to your point, Barb, about the strength of the evidence, and let me just ask you, I think what they're saying is that even if you were that deluded, quote, you may not send an armed mob to the Capitol, you may not sit for 187 minutes and refuse to stop the attack, you may not send out a tweet that incites further violence. It sounds like around the violence, she's looking at what the committee talks about as dereliction of duty. Is that actually a specific crime that you can charge someone of, Barbara?
So it's not a federal offense, but there actually is a really interesting legal theory here for manslaughter, which federal law defines as a death that occurs.
What? Did she just say manslaughter? That is like some serious stretching right there. Like, how do they go from he's not connected at all to any of the violence that happened at the Capitol on January 6th to let's charge the man with manslaughter, because that makes so much sense. Manslaughter, why? Because he dared to contest the election results and to say he thought it was stolen. That is some serious stretching right there. Kind of reminds me of Stretch Armstrong. That's the Democrats right now, trying to stretch so far. Let's stretch so far to try to say that Donald Trump should be charged with manslaughter when the only person who actually killed someone was actually Michael Byrd, which Joe Biden, on his inauguration day, gave the man a medal. So just take that one in right there. So the only person who was actually killed was, the only person who actually killed someone, shot an unarmed protester, was given an award, a medal. Come on now. And their argument saying that Trump should be charged with manslaughter, why again? Well, let's hear what the rest of what she's saying. Why? Why should he be charged with manslaughter?
Property when a person acts with a reckless mens rea, a reckless mindset, or even gross negligence. And so Donald Trump, unlike most ordinary citizens, has not only a duty not to do something bad, he has an affirmative duty to take action to protect people. And so I think you could possibly put together a theory based on the facts that Liz Cheney just described to make Donald Trump responsible for the deaths that occurred that day.
That's incredible.
So Donald Trump, who had no say in the security at the Capitol, right? He should be charged with manslaughter. Yet Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, who they were the ones who presided over their sergeant of arms of the House and the Senate, who the sergeant of arms, that's their responsibility to keep the Capitol building safe. That's their responsibility. It's their job. Security of the Capitol building and facilities, right? And Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell could have easily instructed their sergeant of arms to instruct the Capitol, the chief of Capitol Police, who resigned later in disgust with Nancy Pelosi and the sergeant of arms, mind you. They could have instructed them to have the National Guard there. In fact, everyone else was calling for it, okay? You had Christopher Wray even calling for it, but he couldn't do it. There's an order of operations. There's a chain of command. So in order for the National Guard to have been there, you would have had to have Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell instruct their sergeant of arms of the House and the Senate to then instruct the chief of the Capitol Police to then call in and communicate with the National Guard to have the National Guard there. The Capitol Police chief was begging and saying, please, let's have the National Guard there. In fact, he had some of the National Guard agreeing to actually have some people on standby, right? But he was kind of doing that on his own. There was a lot of talk about potential for protests, riots, violence. This could have been a very turbulent time period, no matter which way the January 6th hearing went, okay? And there were groups from all across the country there, all right? And we know that we had Shut Down DC, Extinction Rebellion, BLM, and other left-wing groups, which I had communicated to these law enforcement agencies that these groups were plotting to take over government buildings. Okay? Weeks in advance, I was letting them know this. So if anyone with this stretch, this loophole, right, should be criminally charged for manslaughter for dereliction of duty, per se, that's Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell. So thank you for that insight there. We should definitely take that into consideration after we take back the House and the Senate so that we can then turn around and criminally charge Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell for their dereliction of duty. Okay? All right, so let's talk a little bit about why the January 6th storming of the Capitol event by a bunch of Asian provocateurs, essentially, went against President Trump and why Trump would not have had a motive to have had that happen, especially at the time that it happened. Check out this clip here from my documentary, Side of the Steel. Data, expert testimony, and witnesses had surfaced that an increasing number of representatives were willing to have the evidence presented over the next few days.
Over the next 10 days, we get to see the machines that are crooked, the ballots that are fraudulent, and if we're wrong, we will be made fools of. But if we're right, a lot of them will go to jail.
There were states' legislatures who were already sending letters saying that they wanted the slates to be sent back. That now, after they had reviewed the evidence, after they had heard the witness testimonies regarding election fraud and meddling, they were actually requesting the slates back so that they could then do a new hearing. But all of that got wrecked. They were able to use this new data to corroborate their initial data from the November 3rd election. The Senate and House joint session to certify the election had just started to hear objections.
Are there any objections to counting the certificate of vote?
I rise up for myself and 60 of my colleagues to object to the counting of the electoral ballots from Arizona.
An objection presented in writing and signed by both a representative and a senator complies with the law, Chapter 1 of Title 3 of the United States Code. The clerk will report the objection. The two houses will withdraw from joint session. Each house will deliberate separately on the pending objection and report its decision back to the joint session.
When all of the sudden, right on cue, they had to go into recess due to the storming of the Capitol.
Without objection, the chair declares the House in recess pursuant to Clause 12B of Rule 1.
So pay very close attention to the details in that clip there, okay? So you've got Rudy Giuliani, who's the president's attorney at the time, explaining what was going to transpire over the next 10 days. You didn't have Mike Pence objecting, okay? Many people don't understand. Look, I'm not defending Mike Pence, but we have to understand and pay attention to the detail of what's actually happening in the joint session at that time. So what you see is some of the Republicans, some of the representatives putting forward their objections, right? And so what Mike Pence was doing there is he was actually accepting and acknowledging the objection and that they have a right to object. And then he was actually calling the House and the Senate out of the joint committee, right, in the joint session, and off to go deliberate the objection into separate House and Senate chambers. So what was supposed to happen next is what Rudy Giuliani was telling you was going to happen over the next 10 days. We were going to see the Senate and the House literally bring forward testimony from these witnesses that were coming forward. You know, they were going to be going into the audits of the machines, going into all the details of the election and why these representatives were objecting. They were going to be hearing that matter. So that would have, like Rudy Giuliani said, it would have resulted in either Trump and his people looking like fools, or a lot of people were going to be going to jail, okay? And so the establishment couldn't let that happen, okay? So what happened? A bunch of agent provocateurs, many FBI agents, informants, undercover, right? Working in tandem with other left-wing action groups who were actually coordinating with DHS and other government employees in the Zoom chats that I've pretty much put out there for everyone, right? You had the arm of literally operations, intelligence operations, FBI, any other provocateur group out there, probably funded by Soros and others, right? Just on the scene storming the Capitol. So that then they could flip the entire narrative around and say, oh, because of the insurrection, we have to ignore all of the evidence. In fact, we're not even going to hear it. We're not even going to see it anymore. We're just going to approve it all and approve Biden as president. How does that happen? How did Trump benefit from that? Please tell me. And now they've had this January 6th clown show going on for the past couple months where they're trying to literally criminally prosecute and charge President Trump for a crime in which they claim he's responsible for. Right? But they're saying, let's make him responsible. That's actually their words, okay? They say, let's make him responsible. Let's see if I can find that part in the video.
Tim O'Brien, you're the only person among us who's gone toe-to-toe with Donald Trump.
Right here.
To protect, unlike most ordinary citizens, has not only a duty not to do something bad, he has an affirmative duty to take action to protect people. And so I think you could possibly put together a theory based on the facts that Liz Cheney just described to make Donald Trump responsible for the deaths that occurred that day.
To make him responsible? I mean, he's either responsible or he isn't responsible. You don't make someone responsible, okay? So clearly, they're, to me, it's sounding like they're just making it up, right? As they go along, they're making it up. They're trying to make him responsible when they know who is responsible. This has been probably one of the biggest cover-ups in U.S. history, all right? And MSNBC, who had all those analysts, they were not ready for Western Pennsylvania when they decided to interview some local Trump voters about January 6th on their program. Let's go watch this. This is for some comedic relief, guys.
At the insurrection, and he was photographed breaching one of the restricted areas. Is that okay?
Which area? Because I saw a video where Capitol officers were taking away barriers and unlocking doors for people. So, I mean,
they opened the gates.
So
and
it
let them
shouldn't
in.
be disqualifying for an elected official if they participated in January 6th?
He didn't strike anybody. He didn't hurt anybody.
And the only one that died was a protester there, not a Capitol police
An unarmed
officer.
female veteran was
That's
shot
the
by
only one that
police.
died.
Boom.
That's the only one who died.
A police officer did die.
No,
He died
it was
of
a
heart attack.
stroke.
That's
not on site.
Caused by that. That's because
Right.
he shouldn't have been a police officer. It was one woman.
So
who was
what do
shot.
you make, though, overall of January 6th? I mean, watching that footage, it was pretty disturbing. I mean, there were people throwing excrement at the walls, and it was it's the Capitol.
It looked a lot like Antifa's actions
Yeah, it looked
to
a
me.
lot, except on a much smaller scale. It looked the same as the.
She says, it looked a lot like Antifa to me. Oh, interesting. This is getting good.
Black Lives Matter riots.
That's what I saw, the
Every single
similarities
city
to
around
be.
the country, not just
Minneapolis
one.
burns. Kenosha burns.
But so it's okay
Waukesha
just because
Like,
one side that you
No.
They said it looked a lot like Black Lives Matter to me. It looked a lot like the Kenosha riots. Wow, that's a great observation because the groups in those left-wing affinity chats, the Sunrise chats, that were literally talking about how burning down buildings is a legitimate and powerful form of protest, those people were acknowledging in the videos that they were part of the Kenosha riots, that they were part of the George Floyd riots, and they were celebrating the burning of the buildings, okay? They literally teach people how to do these things in their video chats, okay? And how to use those protest rioter tactics, okay? And so these are the same groups that were then talking about, we need to take over the buildings, and there's going to be people there to take over the building, and we should let them, and we should help them, and we're going to use Arab Spring-style tactics and Hong Kong-style tactics, which we've had experts review who've studied the Hong Kong groups overseas, and they said this is exactly the Hong Kong style tactics, okay? So these are professional agitators that were there on January 6th committing those acts. And so that's a very good observation, and it's also a very interesting thing that in the Zoom chats, like I've said before, they mentioned January 6th by date. Did you know that? We're going to go back to this MSNBC clip, but first I want you to listen to this from the Zoom chats where they mentioned January 6th by date as one of the dates for their Capitol disruption activities.
Is it for that, or you have something else?
No, actually, I was going to say that there's a third possible outcome here, and that is a clear Biden victory and Trump trying to burn the country down on the way out. He's got 2.5 months to do it. So are we planning or thinking about anything in that regard in case of that scenario?
Has anybody a direct answer to Alison?
Well, I know that we know that Congress is coming back around November 8th, right?
Right.
9th. So there's that phase. And I know on one of the calls, the disruption working group and all the agrees, we said we need to start thinking about sort of what comes next. So we haven't done that yet. I mean, there are different ideas that are floating around. So I think we're just going to get through and then, yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just curious.
Yeah,
Something
totally.
We'll have to deal with.
We'll totally support Lisa in this. Like, just there are going to be a lot of dates. There's not what we probably will see are legal challenges immediately because they've already filed a bunch of them. And then, right, the dates are the safe harbor date is December 8th. Congress has to make a decision on the 14th. We've got January 6th or 12th. There's a bunch of dates coming up. So that's it. Just
the new Congress. There's
a calendar on Shutdown DC's website you can look at that is really good, an infographic of what tells you exactly what folks are thinking.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Nadine, for the quick answer. Solomon, you're next.
Yeah, I just wanted to put a pin in that. So even if the presidential race is obviously decided, there's a good chance that there will be a number of races that aren't, and there may still be attempts to screw around with what votes get counted around those. And so messaging around making sure every vote gets counted is probably relevant no matter what, even if the presidential race is, is decided.
Linda says she has to up of the call. Alison, you're next on the snack. Was it for that, or you have something else?
No, actually, I was going to say that there's a third possible outcome here, and that is a clear Biden victory. And
okay, so we
Trump
heard that.
Chance that there will be a number of races that aren't, and there may still be attempts to screw around with what votes get counted around those. And so messaging around making sure every vote gets counted is probably relevant no matter what, even if the presidential race is, is decided. And, if we're pro-democracy and all the votes being counted, it's still something we should be paying attention to. Check.
Thanks. Colleen? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was just responding, but Lisa said exactly what I was going to.
Excellent. Anything else on the scenario where Biden wins and or any other scenario we need to talk to very pragmatically here? Cool. I think we're good. Looping back at the very question that Colin maybe raised, that is just a logistical arrangement. How do we feel of, so Occupy is not here, but the bike squad with Colin, I think is represented here. How do we want to do in order to, they are open to support, and Solomon also with, sorry, remind me your group,
Remove Trump.
Remove
Me
Trump.
and Lisa are both.
Yeah. How do we want to share those resources? I'm open to any consideration. Could be completely equitable and a third of in each group, or do we want to have them more at one point because it's going to be more true?
All right, so there you have it, okay? They're literally talking about January 6th right there in the clip there. All right, so now we also have Hillary Clinton, okay, who is now saying that she's worried that the Republicans, the right-wing extremists, are gearing up to steal the election. Well, wait a second. I thought that that's why they think Trump should be criminally charged, is because he said he thought the election was stolen. So they're allowed to say it, right? All throughout 2016, throughout Trump being president, from 2016 to pretty much, or 2017 to 2020, we heard nothing but the Democrats saying they thought the election was stolen. But then when the Republicans say it, it should be banned and censored. When Trump says it, he should be criminally charged. But here we go. Here's Hillary again saying she thinks that the midterms are going to be stolen and that 2024 is going to be stolen.
Indivisibles, I'm here to highlight something that is keeping me up at night. And I know this group really understands what I'm about to say. I know we're all focused on the 2022 midterm elections, and they are incredibly important. But we also have to look ahead, because you know what? Our opponents certainly are. Right-wing extremists already have a plan to literally steal the next presidential election. And they're not making a secret of it. The right-wing controlled Supreme Court may be poised to rule on giving state legislatures, yes, you heard me that correctly, state legislatures the power to overturn presidential elections. Just think, if that happens, the 2024 presidential election could be decided not by the popular vote or even by the anachronistic electoral college, but by state legislatures. Many.
So Hillary Clinton is allowed to say she thinks that the Republicans are going to steal the 2024 elections, and she's talking about midterms as well. But like I said, if we say it, if Trump says it, you know, we should be criminally gone after. And they're even trying even more to go after Trump by saying, you know, going after his people around him, going after his aides. They're trying to force Kash Patel to testify, even though he has been pleading the fifth in the documents case, which they allege that Trump had classified documents, when Kash Patel came out and said that he was a witness and was there when Trump declassified these documents. And now they're trying to force him to testify. And I can understand why Kash Patel wouldn't want to participate in their witch hunt, why he would be fearful that literally anything he says can be used against him. And that's what they do. They try to get you on any little thing or even process crime. So that's why I think a lot of the people around Trump have not been wanting to talk or not been wanting to testify, is because they're so worried about what they had done with Roger Stone and what they had done with General Flynn. I mean, they try to get you on process crimes. It's disgusting. All right, guys. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed today's show of the Millennial Millie Show. I'm signing off.